Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we really try to plunge into, a whole stack of sources, articles, research papers, your notes, even just our own observations sometime.
Right.
And the goal is always to unearth those crucial nuggets of knowledge, our mission. Well, it's to help you, our listener, get genuinely well informed.
Which is harder than it sounds these days, isn't
It
it?
really is, especially in this age we're in.
Yeah, it's just an information deluge out there. I mean, think about it. Every single day we're just bombarded, right? A torrent of news, claims, counterclaims.
Oh, constantly.
And so often this information is, well, it's contradictory, it's emotionally charged, and frankly, it's incredibly difficult to navigate.
Absolutely. Think about any high-profile allegation you've seen recently, maybe something about a public figure.
Mm-hmm.
How do you even begin to sort through that sheer volume, the competing narratives, just to figure out what truly matters?
Exactly. That's really the core challenge we're trying to tackle today.
And for our deep dive today, we're going to use it's a perfect example of this challenge, though it's definitely a highly charged one. The persistent allegations surrounding Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein.
Right, a very charged topic.
Very. And let's be absolutely clear right from the start here. Our purpose isn't just to rehash all the claims or recount the various theories you might have already heard a million times.
No, that's not the goal.
No. Our mission is much more analytical. We're examining these allegations, but through a very specific, critical lens.
Which is?
It's that powerful and, let's be honest, often bewildering interplay between politics and media, and specifically how that dynamic profoundly shapes public perception.
Precisely. That intersection is key. We've sifted through a pretty substantial body of analyses and insights for this deep dive, and that's really what's guiding our exploration today.
Mm-hmm.
Our aim is really to distill this material down, to help you understand not just what information is out there about this topic, because there's a lot of noise.
So much noise.
But more importantly, how that information, and maybe even more critically, the lack of certain information, actively molds public understanding, especially, within a deeply polarized, politically charged environment like the one we're in.
That's the real skill we're trying to hone here, isn't it? For you, the listener. Because understanding this dynamic, as you scroll through your news feeds, listen to commentary, or even just talk to people.
Yeah, just daily conversations.
It's absolutely crucial. And this isn't just about the specific Trump-Epstein situation, is it? It's really a foundational skill for making sense of, well, almost all modern political narratives.
Indeed. We live in this era where information is, everywhere. It's abundant yet genuine clarity.
Yeah.
That's often in critically short supply.
So true.
So the ability to discern the sort of underlying mechanisms, how stories are presented, or maybe more subtly, how certain narratives are, let's say, strategically withheld, that's paramount.
Yeah, that withholding part is interesting.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because what isn't said, what remains unconfirmed, or maybe what never quite solidifies into verifiable evidence, that can often be just as significant, maybe even more significant, than what's overtly broadcast everywhere.
It's kind of counterintuitive, right? We tend to focus on the loudest headlines, the most sensational claims.
Naturally, yeah, they grab the attention.
But this deep dive, hopefully, will reveal that the information landscape is profoundly defined not just by what's being shouted from the rooftops, but also by the strategic silence, the unanswered questions, the evidence that just never seems to materialize.
It really peels back the layers, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You start to see the strategic communication, the political calculation behind it all.
Yeah, and it challenges our first assumptions about how information even works. So hopefully this will provide some illuminating insights as we navigate this really complex terrain. The idea is to empower you, the listener, to better interpret your daily news feeds and all the commentary flying around.
Okay, let's dive in then.
All right. Let's start with a really fundamental question. It's one that comes up frequently in the analyses we've looked at, and honestly, it resonates with a pretty widely held public sentiment.
Okay.
It's a question that, on the surface, just seems like pure common sense. People ask, why isn't Joe Biden or even Kamala Harris president if Trump were definitively on that list?
Ah, yes. That exact question.
Right. For so many observers, wouldn't a revelation like that seem like an absolute election win slam dunk?
That phrase, election win slam dunk, it just emerges repeatedly in discussions around this. It really does capture a widespread feeling and, honestly, a pretty logical skepticism. I mean, think about the immense gravity of the Epstein case itself.
Horrific.
Absolutely. Combine that with the intense political polarization we're living through right now.
Yeah, it's intense.
So a concrete, provable link between a figure like Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Well, by all conventional political logic, that would be seen as just an undeniable, incredibly potent political weapon.
You'd think so. What kind of impact are we talking about?
Oh, profound. Think about the ramifications. It would inflict immediate, deep damage to his reputation.
Right.
It would systematically undermine his credibility with voters, probably cripple his influence even within his own political base. The trust erosion, instantaneous.
Yeah.
Far-reaching.
You could see it demoralizing supporters, maybe swaying undecideds.
Absolutely. Potentially demoralizing his base, swaying undecided voters en masse.
Yeah.
It fits the pattern, doesn't
It does. Historically, we've definitely seen how effectively political opponents leverage, moral failings or even just associations with bad actors.
Oh, yeah. It's a classic playbook move.
Such revelations are often deployed with, devastating effects. So this isn't just theoretical talk. It's acknowledging how high-stakes politics and these information campaigns actually operate on the ground.
Exactly. The impact of such a verified link would just be immense.
Undeniably immense.
Absolutely immense. And building right on that, our sources also highlight this pervasive expectation. The idea that if truly concrete, verifiable proof existed within institutions, say, the Department of Justice, the FBI, especially under an administration led by a political opponent. Well, the expectation is that information would likely find its way out,
Great.
Into the public domain, probably through unofficial channels.
Okay, that sounds like a pretty strong assertion. Why would that expectation exist? I mean, especially coming from within official government bodies, that sounds potentially problematic.
Well, it's less about a direct accusation of, say, illegal leaking activity and more about acknowledging the huge institutional and, frankly, political pressures that exist in these high-stakes environments.
Okay, the pressure cooker effect.
Kind of. Information, especially information seen as damaging to a major political rival, just has a documented tendency to leak out when the motivations are strong enough.
Right.
Think about the sheer number of individuals who have access to sensitive data within these huge government organizations. You've got investigators, analysts, administrative staff, tons of people. If definitive evidence really existed, the sheer volume of people who might eventually become aware of it, combined with, varying ideological viewpoints, maybe a desire for accountability, it just makes it incredibly difficult to contain completely.
So it's maybe not just one person deciding to leak, but more like a system under intense pressure and things finding cracks.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. And then you have to factor in the broader political landscape. Yeah. Look, the Democratic Party, like any political party, really has a documented historical tendency to capitalize on any potential misstep or vulnerability of their opponents.
It's just politics, isn't it?
It's pretty much standard operating procedure in competitive politics. I mean, both major parties are constantly looking for advantages, and exploiting perceived weaknesses is, that's a common tactic. It's how the game is often played.
Okay, so you're putting together a few things here. The massive potential for damage to a rival.
Huge potential.
The historical pattern of political parties exploiting weaknesses.
Standard practice.
And the perceived ability of powerful institutions like the DOJ or the FBI to uncover and maybe release such material, officially or unofficially.
Right. When you combine all those elements, it creates this almost inescapable expectation for many observers that such a revelation would indeed be that election win slam dunk.
Yeah, it seems logical from that perspective.
Precisely. The phrasing, undoubtedly a potent political weapon, isn't really hyperbole in this context. It reflects a widespread belief in the immense strategic value such a verifiable revelation would hold.
And given that huge value.
And the typical dynamics of a competitive political environment.
Yeah, the expectation for that kind of information to be weaponized is just profound.
And yet, here we are. If this information is supposedly that potent, such a powerful political weapon, then the really big question that hangs in the air is, why haven't we seen it used decisively?
Why hasn't it become this definitive, widely accepted bombshell that blows everything up? What does that absence, that silence truly mean?
That is precisely the critical point our deep dive just keeps circling back to. Because as we've sort of hinted at already, the absence of something can be just as informative, maybe even more telling sometimes, than its presence.
Okay.
The continued absence of, say, official leaks confirming something concrete or solid, undeniable proof becoming sustained front-page news consistently across diverse journalistic outlets, not just partisan ones,
Right, across the board.
that suggest two main possibilities. And both of them, when you really think about the intricate, often unpredictable political landscape we're in, they make a great deal of practical sense.
All right, let's unpack these possibilities then. What's the first one for this really striking absence of a smoking gun?
Okay, the first possibility, and maybe the most straightforward one, it points to a fundamental lack of verifiable information.
Simple as that. Simply put, the proof just isn't there. Despite incredibly intense scrutiny from, a whole myriad of sources, media investigations, political opponents, maybe even potential whistleblowers, the concrete, irrefutable evidence that would definitively link Trump to Epstein's actual criminal activities, it just hasn't surfaced. At least not in a form that withstands rigorous examination.
Okay, and when we talk about verifiable,
Yeah.
what's the standard we're talking about here? What would that kind of proof actually need to look like to count?
Yeah, that's important. We're talking about high bar.
Right.
The kind of evidence that would, stand up in a court of law or pass muster with serious investigative journalists, not just bloggers or opinion writers.
Real scrutiny.
Real scrutiny. This would include things like direct official documents, emails, maybe travel logs, financial records, communication transcripts, stuff like that.
Tangible things. Tangible things. It would probably involve corroborated testimony, and crucially, from multiple independent witnesses. Not just one person's account, but several individuals whose stories align, and who don't have an obvious axe to grind or motivation to fabricate.
Okay.
We're also looking for, solid digital trails, maybe geolocation data, time-stamped communications, perhaps irrefutable photographic or video evidence. These are the kinds of elements that would transition a claim from just rumor or speculation into established fact.
And if proof of that magnitude, that kind of quality, actually existed, well, it seems like it would be incredibly difficult to keep under wraps, wouldn't it?
Incredibly difficult. Just think of the sheer number of people who would want that information out. You've got tenacious journalists competing for the next big scoop, political rivals desperate for an advantage.
Whistleblowers, maybe.
Absolutely. Whistleblowers driven by conscience, or even just concerned citizens who feel some kind of moral imperative to expose wrongdoing. In our current information environment, where leaks are, let's face it, pretty common, and digital dissemination is instantaneous, completely containing solid, verifiable proof of that nature seems highly, highly improbable.
So the fact that we haven't seen it.
The persistent absence of that kind of evidence, despite the intense motivation and ample opportunity for it to emerge, it strongly suggests that what's primarily circulating is likely, unverified rumors, maybe speculative claims, or perhaps circumstantial details that just don't meet that high bar of verifiable proof, whether that's for legal prosecution or just widespread journalistic acceptance.
Okay, that makes sense. And actually, on that very note, we have a pretty significant piece of insight from our sources that seems relevant here. The recent testimony of former Attorney General Bill Barr.
Ah, yes. Barr's testimony.
He served as Attorney General during the Trump administration from February 2019 through December 2020. And that period, critically, it encompassed the immediate aftermath of Jeffrey Epstein's rearrest and then his death in August 2019 while awaiting trial.
Right. A time of incredibly intense public and governmental focus on the whole Epstein case. And Barr, given his position right at the top of the Department of Justice, he would have had access to some of the most sensitive, comprehensive information available regarding federal investigations, including aspects of the Epstein case, presumably.
Presumably, yes. And according to the reports we've seen, when he testified to House investigators recently on this very subject, he stated quite unequivocally that he, quote, never saw anything that would implicate President Trump in any of this.
Pretty direct statement.
Very direct. He apparently further clarified that he, again quoting, didn't know anything about a client list, and specifically had no conversations with President Trump about any such list.
Okay, so a flat denial of seeing incriminating evidence or even discussing a list.
Correct. And what's particularly insightful here, maybe even provocative coming from Barr's perspective, given his high-level position and, his firsthand experience with the political dynamics in Washington.
He definitely knows how that works.
Right. Is his belief, his stated belief, that if there had been anything genuinely negative pertaining to President Trump regarding Epstein, he felt the Biden administration, quote, would probably have leaked it out prior to the presidential election.
Wow. So he's essentially saying, if it existed, my political opponents would have used it.
That seems to be the implication. Barr apparently went as far as to state he would be, quote, shocked if such information existed and hadn't been leaked by now.
Okay, that's quite a statement from a former AG.
It is. And this testimony, coming from someone who was not only in a position to potentially know, but also intimately familiar with the inner workings of the DOJ and the political motivations at play, it serves as a really powerful reinforcement of our first possibility, doesn't it?
It really does. The lack of verifiable, weaponizable proof. It's a former attorney general who is certainly aware of the immense political value such information would hold, found nothing himself, and then even publicly expressed his expectation that a politically motivated leak would have happened if the evidence existed. Well, that significantly strengthens the argument that concrete, irrefutable evidence simply has not surfaced.
So when we talk about this continued absence of definitive evidence, especially in such a politically supercharged environment where it would be a massive asset to opponents, Barr's statements really underline that point.
Yeah.
It suggests that what's out there, what's circulating, largely consists of those rumors, the speculation or information that is maybe at best circumstantial. Just nothing meeting that high bar of verifiable proof that could be decisively used to, really alter the political landscape.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The fact that someone of Barr's standing, who is, literally in the thick of it, found nothing, and even articulated a strong logical reason why such information should have been leaked if it existed. It means the silence in this specific instance probably isn't just accidental or insignificant. For many people looking at this, it speaks volumes about what isn't actually there in terms of hard evidence.
Okay, so possibility one. The proof, the hard verifiable proof, just doesn't exist. That seems pretty clear, especially with Barr's testimony adding weight. But what's the second possibility our sources point towards? You mentioned a more nuanced one.
Yeah, the second possibility is it's a bit more intricate. It's deeply rooted in understanding contemporary political strategy, really. It suggests that maybe there's been a strategic choice by political actors to avoid overreaching within this very contentious political landscape.
Avoid overreaching.
Okay.
What does that mean exactly?
It means that even if there were some partial information, maybe something inconclusive, something ambiguous.
Something less than a smoking gun.
Exactly, something less than that slam dunk. The risks associated with releasing it, precisely because it's not definitive enough, could actually outweigh any potential benefits you might get from putting it out there.
Ah, okay. So it becomes a careful calculation of risk versus reward. How does that actually play out in practice? What are these risks they'd be worried about?
Well, political campaigns, parties, they're constantly doing this kind of risk-reward calculus, right? If you release information that turns out to be weak or uncorroborated or maybe easily rebuttable, it can backfire spectacularly, particularly in our current hyper-polarized environment.
So?
Well, if an allegation doesn't meet that slam dunk expectation we talked about, it can be immediately dismissed by opponents as just a political hit job, or a witch hunt, or even a complete fabrication.
Right, we hear those phrases all the time.
We do. And we've seen historical instances where these kinds of missteps have not only failed to damage the intended target, but have actually energized their base.
That's backfired completely.
Completely backfired.
Yeah.
And potentially disillusioned undecided voters who just dislike what looks like manipulative, dirty politics.
Yeah.
Think about campaigns that have maybe gone too far with an accusation, only to have it kind of unravel, making the accuser look desperate or dishonest or just incompetent.
Yeah, that makes sense. And beyond just energizing the opposition, I suppose an overreach like that could seriously damage the credibility of the institutions involved too, right? Like the DOJ, the FBI, maybe even major media outlets that push unverified claims.
Absolutely. Public trust in these institutions is, well, let's say it's fragile already in many quarters.
Understatement.
Yeah. And a perceived misstep, looking like you're playing politics with investigations or news coverage, can have really long-lasting negative effects on their legitimacy. People remember that stuff.
So the calculation isn't just about the immediate election cycle.
Not always. Political strategists often have to think longer term. They might prioritize maintaining credibility, building a consistent, coherent narrative over trying to score a quick, flimsy win that could easily fall apart under scrutiny.
Right.
They want to avoid what some political scientists apparently call the stray sand effect.
Stray sand effect? What's that?
It's a kind of a neat analogy. It describes how if you throw weak, uncorroborated information like just a handful of sand at a target, it doesn't really stick, does it?
No, it just blows away.
Exactly. Instead, it just creates this cloud of dust that maybe obscures the view for a bit,
Hmm.
but often it makes the entire accusation seem baseless or politically motivated.
Mhm.
So it actually amplifies the counter-narrative and can even strengthen the target's position by making them look like a victim of unfair attacks.
Wow, that's a really powerful image. Okay, so it's either possibility one, the smoking gun just doesn't exist, maybe like Barr suggests, or possibility two, there's a strategic reason not to fire what little ammo, if any, might be there because it could ricochet.
That's a good summary. And both of these possibilities, as you've kind of laid out, they align with common sense when you consider the complexities, the intricacies of how information operates in high-stakes politics.
Yeah.
Because, logically, if truly solid, unequivocally weaponizable proof existed, given its immense political value and how political opponents typically operate, you would almost certainly expect it to be front-page news by now, dominating every single cycle.
Right, it wouldn't just be bubbling away on certain corners of the internet.
Exactly. The fact that it hasn't, that it largely remains sort of in the realm of conjecture or unsubstantiated claims, maybe pushed by specific groups but not widely verified, that's a significant data point in itself.
So how does this absence affect you, the listener?
Well, it directly shapes your perception, consciously or unconsciously. Look, if that solid evidence were to suddenly appear tomorrow, validated by credible sources, it would undoubtedly confirm suspicions for some people.
For sure.
But its conspicuous absence, especially despite such high political motivation for it to be found or released, understandably cultivates skepticism in others about whether the allegations are definitively true.
Makes sense. If it was so bad, why isn't it out there?
Precisely. So the silence itself, the lack of that bombshell, profoundly shapes understanding. It illustrates that sometimes the most revealing aspect of a political narrative isn't the loudest proclamation, but rather the quiet, strategic considerations behind what remains unsaid or unconfirmed.
Okay, this brings us to another critical layer then. We've talked about the presence or absence of definitive information, but what about the stuff that does get out there? Because allegations, even without definitive proof, they certainly fly around, they get traction, they grab public attention.
Oh, absolutely. They generate clicks, headlines.
Exactly. So the crucial question then becomes, what kind of information are we actually getting when these claims surface? And maybe more importantly, how reliable is it? This leads us right into what we're calling the fog of sensationalism and partisanship.
Yeah, that fog metaphor feels incredibly apt for our current media landscape, doesn't it?
Mm.
We seem to operate in an environment where the line, the distinction between actual rigorously verified news and just narrative,
Yeah.
a story constructed to serve a specific agenda, gets incredibly blurry.
Dangerously blurry sometimes.
Dangerously blurry. And our sources are quite explicit on this point. Allegations and stories that do manage to surface, especially when they're tried into these high-stakes political fights, they frequently lack the rigor of credible investigation.
Okay, lack the rigor. Break that down for us. What does that mean in practical terms for the information that you or I might encounter?
Well, fundamentally, it suggests a shortage of verified facts. It means that what's being presented often isn't supported by sufficient corroborated testimony, especially from truly independent sources.
Right, not just someone with a clear motive.
Exactly. And there's often a real absence of official documents or primary evidence, the kind of stuff that would actually stand up under serious scrutiny, whether that's in a courtroom or during a meticulous investigation by a top-tier, respected newsroom.
So it's not just about, like, one person's unverified story.
No, it's often about a pattern. It can feel like deliberately sidestepping the hard work, the cross-referencing, the painstaking corroboration, the digging for primary documents. All those foundational elements that really define credible ethical investigation. Instead of that hard work, the focus shifts.
So if rigor is often missing, what takes its place? You're saying these narratives then tend to lean heavily on what grabs immediate attention.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
What creates instant buzz, and perhaps most importantly, what confirms the biases people already hold.
Confirmation bias, playing to the base.
It absolutely is. And this reflects a profoundly sensationalized approach to political discourse, one that directly impacts you, the listener, and your daily information diet.
So,
Our analysis points out that in this relentless race for clicks, for views, for engagement, which, let's be honest, drives a huge portion of the digital media economy today,
it really does.
outlets may prioritize sensational claims over substantiated facts. Now, this isn't always necessarily malicious intent, right? It might just be a consequence of a business model that rewards immediate virality over slow, careful verification.
But the outcome is the same.
The outcome is they amplify claims that are exciting or scandalous or emotionally charged, even if those claims haven't been fully vetted or are maybe built on pretty shaky ground. And this creates an incredibly challenging environment for the public to try and navigate.
Which means, for you, the listener, you're far more likely to encounter conjecture and these unsubstantiated claims than you are actual concrete evidence.
That's often the case. You see these attention-grabbing headlines, right? Strongly hinting at major connections or terrible implications.
Yeah, they're designed to make you click.
Exactly. But then when you actually try to dig deeper, maybe read the full article, look for the sourcing, the actual proof just isn't quite there.
Or it's missing entirely.
Often, yeah. It's missing, or it's presented ambiguously, or it's based on this long chain of assumptions rather than direct, provable facts.
And this isn't just harmless clickbait, is it?
No, not at all. This sensational approach isn't just a form of entertainment. It actively shapes public perception. It cultivates a false sense of certainty, or maybe just a strong gut reaction around things that are still entirely unproven.
That feels like a powerful and often misleading dynamic.
It is, and it makes it incredibly difficult for even the most diligent individuals, people who really try to be informed, to separate the actual signal, the real information, from all the overwhelming noise.
So it's not simply about flashy headlines. It's about trying to navigate this genuinely complex landscape where telling fact from politically motivated fiction, especially on highly charged subjects like the Trump Epstein allegations, becomes increasingly difficult. We've talked about the absence of information and the often lacking quality of the information that is there. How does all of this get tangled up in the broader political picture? How does that contribute to this really difficult informational environment?
Yeah, that's really the crux of it, isn't it? Our analysis consistently circles back to this central point. The interplay between politics and media isn't just complex. It's often deliberately muddled by partisanship and sensationalism. That phrase from our sources, murky waters of contemporary political narratives, it just feels incredibly apt.
Murky waters.
Yeah. Imagine trying to see clearly through a thick, constantly shifting fog, right? Or attempting to navigate a treacherous river without a reliable map. That's kind of the challenge you face as a news consumer today.
And this complexity, this murkiness, you're saying it isn't just a random thing that happens.
No, not at all. It often seems to be a direct result of a powerful feedback loop. You have deep-seated political agendas that actively influence media, maybe dictating what gets covered, how it gets framed, even what specific details are highlighted, or, just as importantly, downplayed or ignored.
Right.
And then in turn, the media shapes politics through its chosen narratives and the sheer volume of its coverage.
And partisanship fuels this loop.
Massively. Partisanship means information's almost always presented through a very specific ideological lens. It acts like a filter.
Mm-hmm.
And this filter dictates what you see, how it's reported, what gets emphasized, and crucially, what facts might be omitted or minimized because they don't fit the preferred narrative.
And the unfortunate consequence.
The unfortunate consequence is often the creation and reinforcement of echo chambers.
Yeah.
Where individuals predominantly encounter information that just confirms their existing beliefs.
Which makes it harder and harder to get a balanced view.
Exponentially harder. And the emotional investment people have in seeing their side win often just trumps the calm search for objective truth. People get dug in.
So what's the net result of all this muddling, this fog, especially when, as we've discussed, there's often no solid verifiable proof underpinning the loudest claims, like in the Trump Epstein situation?
Well, the direct consequence is that claims like these, the ones linking high-profile individuals to controversial figures, they tend to stay relegated to conjecture or unsubstantiated claims. They just don't achieve the status of widely accepted facts across the board.
They might be huge in certain circles, but not universally accepted.
Exactly. While they might spread like wildfire on social media or be endlessly debated on partisan news channels or become a powerful talking point for specific political factions, they never truly achieve that status of verifiable truth that is generally accepted, regardless of your political affiliation.
So they just hang there.
They exist in this kind of limbo, yeah. A state of perpetual ambiguity, constantly fueling speculation, maybe division, but never quite hardening into something that most people would acknowledge as real and definitively true. That's precisely why that murky waters description feels so accurate.
It really does. And it starkly highlights the immense challenge you face, the listener, trying to discern truth amidst all that noise in an environment where information feels like it's relentlessly filtered, framed, and sensationalized through countless partisan lenses. So, okay.
Yeah.
Given this incredibly challenging, often disorienting environment, what is your role? How do you, as an engaged citizen who genuinely wants to be informed, how do you make sense of it all? How do you even begin to navigate these powerful currents?
Yeah, that brings us right to the absolute necessity of critical assessment. How do you cut through this noise and become truly informed? Not just on this specific difficult topic, but on any politically charged story that floods your feeds.
Right.
Our deep dive makes it unequivocally clear. Understanding this dynamic between politics, media framing, and the very nature of information itself is absolutely crucial for anyone attempting to navigate the murky waters of contemporary political narratives.
It's not optional anymore.
It's not just an interesting academic exercise, no. It's a practical, vital skill for every citizen in our modern world. Without it, you're constantly sort of swimming against these strong, often hidden currents of bias and sensation. You're susceptible to being pulled in directions you might not even realize.
That's a powerful thought, and frankly, a bit sobering. And while, okay, a healthy dose of skepticism about sensational allegations is obviously warranted. That's just basic critical thinking, right? Be skeptical.
Of course.
Our analysis constantly emphasizes, though, that it's equally important to critically assess the motivations behind the information, or maybe even the lack of information that circulates in the public domain. It requires a much more active approach than just passive skepticism.
It's far more than just doubting what you hear. It really is about becoming an active investigator of your own information intake.
An investigator. I like that.
Yeah, you're not just passively asking, is this true? You need to dig deeper, probe a bit. You should be asking, why am I hearing this particular story now? Why from this specific source? Who stands to benefit if I believe this narrative?
Exactly. Or, maybe just as important, who benefits if I dismiss it out of hand?
Good point. And perhaps the most insightful question, the one we keep coming back to, why aren't I hearing other things? Why hasn't certain information been verified or confirmed, especially if it seems so important? It's about developing that capacity for seeing the strategy behind the headlines.
Okay.
And this critical assessment, it has this crucial two-sided nature we need to emphasize. First, when you encounter information, you have to scrutinize its presence.
What's actually there?
What's actually there? What is the source? What's the rigor or lack thereof of the investigation that produced it? Is it actual verifiable evidence? Or is it just speculation, maybe a carefully worded hint, or perhaps a leak without any discernible paper trail? Understanding the source, the quality, and the potential agenda behind the information you see is just fundamental.
Okay, so evaluating what's present is step one. Makes sense.
Absolutely. Then, just as important, you have to actively consider the absence of information, that silence again.
His silence speaks volumes.
Sometimes it really does. If a claim is widespread, if it seems politically useful to one side, but it consistently lacks official backing or credible reporting from diverse, nonpartisan sources, then you must ask why. Why isn't it being confirmed? Is it simply unprovable? Or is there maybe a strategic reason why it's not being confirmed or pushed harder?
Like the risk of backfiring we talked about?
Exactly. Perhaps there are legal risks involved in releasing weak evidence, or maybe a fear of undermining other, more critical political goals. This discerning approach means demanding more than just a catchy headline or a strong assertion from someone with an agenda.
So both the presence and the absence of information warrant really intense scrutiny.
Precisely. Our analysis powerfully reinforces this core idea. Public perception gets profoundly shaped not just by what is said, but also by what is not said and the perceived political motivations behind it. That's subtle, maybe, but it's an incredibly powerful point.
Yeah.
The silence, that striking lack of the slam dunk evidence we discussed earlier, it can speak volumes. And it aligns perfectly with just common sense, doesn't it?
It kind of does, yeah.
If truly definitive, weaponizable evidence about a major public figure simply doesn't materialize in a verifiable way, if the political will is there, the institutional power is there, the immense motive is there, but the damaging proof consistently fails to emerge in a solid, impactful form, well, logically, that should cultivate a healthy degree of skepticism about the original allegation itself.
So it's not about automatically dismissing everything or blindly trusting one side over the other.
Not at all. It's about demanding a higher standard of proof. It's about understanding the complex web of forces, political, media, institutional, that shape what we even perceive as truth. especially when the political stakes are so incredibly high.
And using someone like Barr's testimony again as an example.
Yeah, using Barr's testimony as a prime example. His statements really highlight that even within the highest echelons of government, the observed absence of compelling evidence, despite what seems like strong political incentive for it to emerge, serves as a powerful indicator in itself. It guides you, the listener, to understand that what often appears, maybe initially to be a clear-cut case of malfeasance, may, in reality, be a story shaped more by political narrative and speculative claims than by concrete, verifiable facts.
So as you, our listener, encounter future high-profile allegations, or frankly, any complex political story, we truly encourage you to keep this entire dynamic firmly in mind. Don't simply react to the headline.
Exactly. Don't just absorb the loudest voices or the most sensational claims that pop up in your feed. Push yourself. Think critically about the source of the information, the actual rigor of the claims being made, and crucially, what might be conspicuously missing from the story, and try to figure out why it might be missing.
Ask yourself, what would truly verifiable evidence look like in this specific context?
Yes. Consider the political current swirling around the issue. That disciplined critical thinking, that habit of looking for the currents beneath the surface before you jump to conclusions. That is genuinely your most powerful tool. It's your best defense for making sense of this complex, often highly politicized, and frequently murky information world we all inhabit. It really empowers you to build a more accurate, more robust understanding of what's truly happening beyond the spin.
Wow, that really was a deep dive into the strategic underbelly of information, wasn't it? It just gets so complex so quickly.
It does.
We've unpacked how the mere absence of evidence can function almost like a political signal in itself, how sensationalism often seems to beat out solid investigation in the media landscape.
Yeah, the incentives are often skewed that way.
And how partisan filters can just profoundly muddle the entire informational environment for everyone involved.
Right. But the core takeaway here, I think, feels incredibly clear and hopefully empowering for you, the listener, in a world that seems like it's drowning in information, especially when it comes to these politically charged allegations. Understanding the intricate dynamics between politics and media isn't just a nice-to-have intellectual exercise.
No, it feels essential.
It's your superpower. It really is. It's the essential skill for navigating the modern world with discernment, with your eyes open.
It truly is a superpower. It's what allows you to move beyond just reacting emotionally to headlines and actually begin to grasp the multifaceted forces that shape what you see and hear every single day, to understand the very process of how narratives get constructed and pushed out there.
Exactly. And maybe as we wrap up here, here's a final, perhaps provocative thought for you to consider, long after this deep dive concludes.
Okay, leave us with something to chew on.
If potentially the most damaging information imaginable about a public figure remains unsubstantiated, if it persistently lingers as mere conjecture, despite years of intense scrutiny, despite immense political motivation to make it stick, despite vast institutional resources being potentially available, what does that tell us? What does it tell us not just about that specific allegation, but maybe about the fundamental power dynamics of information control in our society at large?
That's a big question, a really big question.
It is. What other stories, maybe ones that aren't quite so dramatic or visible, ones that don't grab the headlines in the same way, might be getting shaped or amplified or conversely unshaped or suppressed by similar forces?
By strategic silence.
By strategic silence, by shifting media priorities, by shrewd political calculation. It touches the very fabric of how information is generated, how it's consumed, and ultimately how belief itself forms in our interconnected world today.
That thought really hits home. It kind of encapsulates the ongoing challenge, but also the profound opportunity for critical engagement that each of us actually has. It just reinforces how invaluable it is to constantly question the sources, to probe the motivations behind everything you encounter every single day, no matter how certain or obvious it might initially seem. Don't just take things at face value.
Never. Approach every piece of information with a discerning eye. Look for what's explicitly there, sure, absolutely, but also actively look for what's missing, for those strategic silences we talked about, and try to sense the political and media currents that are shaping both the sound and the silence.
That active, nuanced approach.
That's vital. It's vital for your own journey to becoming truly well-informed, far beyond just the latest headline or the breaking news alert flashing on your phone.
Yeah.
It's about building a strong, resilient framework for understanding how information actually flows, and sometimes, let's be honest, gets manipulated in our complex society.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We sincerely hope you feel maybe a little bit more equipped now to navigate those murky waters we keep mentioning.
Hopefully a bit clearer.
Hopefully, to find the deeper truth. Till next time, keep digging.